Welcome to ConverStayShuns.
Yep.
We have myself, Key, and of course,
Me, Devin, aka Lyrical Instrumentalist.
whoop whoop. I didn't know how to announce you, so I
It's
was
all
like,
good. I knew
I
what's
had
going on.
the pause. I'm like, how I'm going to introduce him today? But yeah, what's been up, Devin?
I got carryover nonsense from last week, but
Still?
I mean, not necessarily that same thing I said last week, but it's just there's a lot of stuff going on in my life, but trying to make transitions in life, and we just gonna keep it at that. So Tia's already making her transition, like I said, come January. So hopefully I'll follow in May.
Okay, look at y'all planning things.
And
That's
transition
exciting.
can mean anything for those who are possibly listening. I'm just saying.
Y'all Virgos.
Hater.
Other than that, what's up? What's up? What else has been up? I took one sip and now.
She got in that cup. No, like I said, we can good. Like I said, been catching up on a lot of stuff. I've been actually happy the progress of this podcast because, like I said on the first episode, I was anxious even coming to do it. So, like, I think finally I'm like comfortable and like good with it. So I'm actually pleased with everything.
I think we're settling in. I was a little nervous too, which is weird because I've done podcasting before, but I think it had been so long since I had gotten involved in it again, especially from the perspective of a hosting perspective.
Right.
I had been behind as far as like content creation, editing and producing, but it had been a while since I was like, okay,
right,
I'm ready to talk about me,
Yeah, so earlier you said you were stressed.
Yeah, I have been really, really stressed lately, and I'm really trying to find balance. I find myself probably having one cocktail a day. Yeah, but I mean, it had been a while since I drank. I didn't really drink after I had children. I kind of stopped. So I was more of like a social drinker, but you never really catch me like, oh, I gotta go get a bottle of wine or let me get a bottle for this event. That hadn't been me since like college party years, like, pre-pregnancy. But yeah, like every night I'm like, whew, some red wine in my life. Any type of alcoholic beverage, please. But yeah, we just opened the restaurant. And so I think at first the initial stress was us managing the restaurant with just us. And so I think that then transitioned to me being over, the head of operations, HR, payroll, everything like that. So now I'm kind of feeling the stress of hiring people, bringing on the right people, building that company morale.
Right.
And it's a little bit of stress coming with that, and it's just, like I said, I think it's like a compounding stress to a certain extent because it went from us working long hours to where we were able to mitigate that to where we're working shorter hours to a certain extent, or maybe having a little bit more time. But
the fact that you see that progress, even that little,
but it still means that we have to hire people. And for me, they don't necessarily look at it as, they're just like, we need more people. And I'm like, yes, but I probably have like the most, like with the background as far as like in business and like running a business. So I'm looking at it more like, yes, we need to manage capacity and bring on people. But at the same time, we are now asking people to look at this as their livelihood, which means that we have to make sure that we're making enough to pay everybody involved. And, and it's like, you're paying people salaries, you're paying them hourly wages and things like that. And to manage that, it's easy to say we need more people, but it's very different from, to manage payroll, to manage overtime, to give people enough time off to where you don't burn them out when you're already burned out, So, it's a lot of stress. And I think with that, it has its high and low points. At the same time, I did have a conference call in the bathroom on Saturday. of the restaurant because I couldn't get away. But I'll be executive producing a podcast called Texas Tea for Hip Hop Streets Atlanta. And it's kind of like them making an imprint in Austin. And so I'll be representing them and essentially executive producing the content and everything.
That sounds dope.
Yeah, wrote the proposal and they loved it. And so we already have our co-host, but I'll essentially be managing and facilitating, the guests that are on. And we're doing a very different type of way of doing podcasting. I don't want to mention it just yet, but it's very exciting. And so, now I'm just trying to manage all my opportunities. I'm still involved in, I'm supposed to be curating a pretty big Black History Month gallery exhibit.
Black History, I got a whole thing with that.
Yeah, so, I have that, and then I am on the committee for the cultural organizers. The cultural organizers committee, I forget, what is the name? It's essentially like where we're deciding funding for cultural arts.
Oh, okay, I got
And
you.
so even though I left my job, I thought that would kind of eliminate me from being one of the, on the committee, but they were just like, no, you still did a lot of the work. So we still want you very much involved in that because we don't have our ears to the street in that regard.
Right.
So, I mean, it's still, it's a lot of stress. And then I'm a mommy and I'm in a relationship. Yeah. And so that is a lot, like to be away from my kids as much as I am, to be away from my man. And it's just, we're in this weird phase with our open relationship where it's like, it's not necessarily open anymore, but it ain't. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of just, it's kind of weird just because I think we've had a really good relationship for a long time. But now I kind of feel that maybe, not necessarily that I've outgrown it, but I don't know. And so I'm having myself in the midst of a, I don't know, not a crisis, like a, I don't know, not an existential crisis, but it's just really like a, who am I? What is my purpose in the world?
Kind of
what?
thing.
Yeah, like being very introspective and just what, and now I'm trying to figure out and kind of dial back and say, what, can I do or what must I do versus what can I do?
Yeah.
And so now I have to look back at my balance and balancing things and kind of just really choose wisely what to do with my time. So it's a little stressful, so I'm sipping now, if y'all hear me.
I just had a meeting with my manager. We was talking about balancing your home life and work life.
The work-life balance? Oh, I know. My background in HR, it doesn't exist. I say that. Like, that's just some shit we had to say, I think, because we want you to work your ass off, and it's not there. And a work-life balance you don't balance it.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to do, because for one, it's like you're working so you can support your home life, but then you also trying to survive your home life without overworking yourself. So, catch-22 kind of.
Very much so.
But you said something about some Black history. Let's talk about our Black history.
Okay.
First of all, I'm gonna say I don't like Black History Month, but I get it. I know we had a conversation earlier about like I said, Black history and like civil rights, and I always think about what is this? The whole Black Lives Matter. And in my mind, I always go back and forth like Black Lives Matter movement versus the civil rights movement. To me, they're different because of different eras, but then at the same time, the Black Lives Matter I think it's become it's mockery, the word I'm looking at, because everybody says it so loosely. And then you got people saying like, well, cops' lives matter, horses' lives matter, cars' lives. So now it's like, it doesn't even hold us. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the Black Lives Matter movement may be very similar to what the civil rights movement was and what it was rooted in. And I mean, even to use that argument of it is diluted a bit, I get that. But I mean, is that not the same with the civil rights movement? you know, now when you have like people fighting for, you know, gay rights, which I totally think, you know, is important, but I don't think we should I don't think it should be communicated or conveyed as, oh, the gay rights movement
it's the same as the civil rights.
Yeah, exactly, that it's the same, because those things I think are very different.
Very different.
But I think civil rights, though, at the same time, is civil. That's civility.
Yeah.
That's how you live your life.
Right.
So I understand it being wrapped in that umbrella or under the umbrella of civil rights. But I think to kind of put it on the same pedestal as the civil rights movement, I think is very unfair. Because I think the civil rights movement essentially started with as a black rights movement.
Right, exactly.
But I think under that, we then start looking at black male rights. We start looking at black women rights. We start looking at feminism. We start looking at a lot of things under that
umbrella.
Yeah, and so, but I think with the Black Lives Matter, I don't know. Like, I don't really remember it happening before Ferguson, before Michael Brown, which is, I don't know. Like, I still remember that so vividly. I still remember the Michael Brown case, like, so freaking vividly. And I don't know why, out of nowhere, like, I just really felt like this, like, surge of emotion just then. But as I looked back on it, I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and don't get into my conspiracy theories or anything like that. But at the same time, if you do your research, like, the protesters that were really well known in that have all been dying. Yeah. You know, and it's been dying in similar ways. And I know just recently, like, the woman who was very involved in the civil right in the Michael Brown case and the protest and the Black Lives Matter that spawned from that. Right. Her son was hung in her backyard with his pants down. And then I remember another guy who was shown on like a lot of the photos where he was like throwing like the tear gas back at like he was killed. And then I remember one of the witnesses for Michael Brown was found shot in his car. Right. And then another one was found shot in their car and it was burned. And so it's just, to me, like, I don't know why as soon as I said his name, that comes it's like, you know.
That's what I think people don't understand about us black people regarding civil rights. And like you're saying, is why I agree with you, why it shouldn't be compared or saying that the struggle is the same as like the gay rights struggle, because for one, like, you can walk outside and you can't say you're not black. Right. You can say you're not gay. Granted, you might not want to because you know you're prideful about it. I get it, you know what I mean? But you can easily say, "Oh, I'm not gay."
Yeah, like, I mean, you could hide that for protection. We couldn't hide being black. Exactly. You know, in order to protect ourselves. And I think also a lot of times I don't like how we alienate ourselves so much. I think at times, though, it is very similar, because I think about how people pick on gay people as if they're helpless. Right. It's like, you know, you're the butt end of the joke. Right. So, you know, you just accept this. And I think that also kind of goes back to, you know, when black people want to talk about black rights, it's just like, oh, well, slavery is so old and let it go. Right. The same way that you just think it's okay to say that. You want us to remember 9/11, that was one day and one event. Exactly. But, you know, they don't really talk about slavery and how that has impacted black people. And I think even more so with like the Holocaust. We don't talk about, you know, I mean, we talk about it a lot more, but Jewish people still very, like, they talk about that. Right. And, you know, and I would never shun them. And I think if I talk about, you know, the plight of black people, if a Jewish person want to talk about the plight of Jewish people, do I feel that they are able to navigate in America a lot easier? Yes. I mean, absolutely. But I mean, their movement and their issues were very similar at the time, and they were treated a lot like black people.
But see, even with that, my thing is too, kind of goes with like with the gay rights. So again, even with the Jewish people, they were white, right? And again, they looked like the same people that were killing them. Which, again, I'm not taking anything away from the Holocaust at all. I don't want anybody misconstrued in that. But at the same time, like, again, it was easier. It would have been easier for them to basically say they're not Jewish, right?
Well, I mean,
kind of,
but I mean,
because there's certain like.
Because I mean, a lot of times they're like, it's like not necessarily with black people. A lot of our names came from slave owners,
right?
But with Jewish people, they had very distinctive names, and so it was, you almost had to change your name if you did not, because people could know.
And I know I said it like it was just so easy, right?
Right.
Just change. And I don't mean it
like that. And I think also when you think about their features, I loved the Jewish people. I was in a Jew crew in high school. Like, I wanted to date a Jewish boy. I just knew my life would end up with me running a Jewish man's business and me having little nappy-headed kids. Right. And so even like their hair texture sometimes, and I've noticed their features, like they have maybe fuller lips, they have bigger noses sometimes. And so that was kind of the same way that they make, you know, the memes and stuff of black in the caricatures of black people. They did that a lot with Jewish people. So I think sometimes it was a little bit harder. You know, it wasn't harder than us, of course, but I think at times it was a little bit harder to come off or pass off.
But even then, like I said, saying, I could say that now in present time, but like then it's like that's not even, again, it's a prideful thing. Like even back then, if there was some way that, you know, we could have maxed us being black, we wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Because now it's like you're kind of, you almost would feel like you're selling out, you know what I mean?
I don't know.
I'm saying then. You know what I'm saying? Look, you know,
you're right.
At that time,
and I mean, I honestly think about it, but I mean, if we think about now how much work we had to do to unlearn just the toxicity that we have that has been in our own community, I don't know. Because, you know, if you think about how they like pretty much created the division of like the lighter skinned black people. Right. You know, so it was almost a privilege to have a child with the white man, whether it was out of wedlock, whether it was whatever. So I wonder if we really had the choice then, what would we have taken? But at the same time, I think we weak as hell, and our ancestors were a lot stronger than we were. So maybe they would have still chosen, you know, to
still fight.
To still fight, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think our ancestors were much stronger than we are now. Because even kind of circulating back to, like I said, the Black Lives Matter movement, even some of the civil rights things. So, like, you know, back in the day, we used to know a lot of like revolutionary people and stuff. And to me personally, I disagree with marching these days. Now, I'm not saying we need to go and fight and shoot up people or nothing to that magnitude, but we need to think of different actions. Because even then, during the civil rights, marching did help a lot, but times has changed so much where it's not, those same tactics aren't working the same. I
agree, but I think a lot of times,
well, it has to be marching with something more with it.
Absolutely.
It can't just be that alone.
And I think that is I don't like how with the civil rights movement, I think we only give credit a lot or more credit to Martin Luther King. I think that black people had been trying peaceful protesting for years and years and years.
Prior to Martin Luther King.
Exactly. So I think that Malcolm X really helped that balance of that threat, because Malcolm X was an intellectual in ways that Martin Luther King was an intellectual, but he also said that these are rights that I will demand if you do not give them to me. Right. You know, and so he was like, we would take up arms. So they were, you know, you had MLK who'll come first, more docile. Let's talk about this intellectually. Then you had Malcolm X who's like, okay, let's talk about this intellectually. But if your ass step out of line, then we got to take this, you know, we got to escalate, you know, the consequences.
And see, and people will look at, and black, well, Malcolm X, you know, they'll look at that and they'll almost like forget, almost like some people look at Malcolm X and then they just automatically group him with Black Panthers, and then from there people think Black Panthers were the opposite of the KKK, and then they, you know, flip it all that way, which it wasn't, because for one, the original Black Panthers were about helping the community and all that, but then at the same time they want to protect their community, because when they're helping the community, you got people coming in there trying to destroy and undo everything that they did. Exactly. So it's like, well, I, you know, want to protect my people while you're trying to come kill us. So now we got to get armed And now we're a threat because we're trying to protect our people.
Yeah. And if you're not giving us these services and resources, we'll create them for ourselves. Because a lot of people don't know the Black Panthers started the WIC program that was then taken over by the state.
Right.
But they started the WIC program to make sure that women, infant, and children in these, impoverished communities were getting the resources, nutritional resources and value that they needed to sustain their lives or healthy lifestyles. So, I think that I hate that how much credit is given to MLK and how much I feel is taken away or how much Malcolm X is discredited, because I feel that we were trying a peaceful way for a long time.
Right.
I think it wasn't until the threat of the Black Panthers who said, look, we've been trying, but you know. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think that they complemented each other. And I also think that I wish that we still did that, because I think back in those days you had the Carter G. Woodsons, you had the W.E.B. Du Bois, who had different thought and schools of thought, where some were like, we need to try and integrate in the white communities. And then you had some that was like, fuck that shit. Like, but I'm like, they respectfully, argued their points. And so I think now we try and just tear each other down in these major platforms for everyone to see.
And like you said, that we don't honor each other's points. We don't do it respectfully, like exactly like you said. We come at it like we're already going into it in a like an argumentative way. We're not coming into it like we're trying to find a resolution or a happy medium. You're already coming into it like, well, I'm gonna say this, and I know he's gonna disagree, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, you know what I mean? No, it's like, no, you gotta come into it like, how do we help all of our people?
Have this open dialogue, and different things will help different people. And I think a lot of times also in the Black community, when we talk about racism, we can be very racist and towards ourselves. And I think I hear a lot of times with this whole woke community, I mean, I love y'all. People probably consider me woke. I don't know. I call them woke and broke, because the wokest people don't want to live by capitalism. They don't want to make, so you rather live this broke ass life.
Right.
Whatever. That's another subject. But I do think that a lot of times the fight doesn't look the same, and it's, if you are a grassroots type protester that is bringing communities together, blah, blah, that's fine. But at the same time, that does not take away or diminish the value of maybe a law clerk in the district attorney's office in the work that they're doing. But the woke crowd could easily look at the law clerk as if
you're a sellout.
Yeah, you're a sellout, or you're Uncle Tom. And also vice versa. The law clerk could look, well, you out in the community doing this, you don't have money, you don't, and we all have, I think as a Black person in the Black community, our jobs is not only for us to prevail, but it should be to open doors for other people.
And we forget what the word community means. And for us to be self-sustaining, you need all of these different aspects. So you need a lawyer, you need a police.
Exactly. It takes a village. You cannot, I don't think you can't infiltrate a system from the outside. You can't change a system from the outside looking in.
Because for one, you don't even know the system. So you trying to fight. That's like, and I hate to say this, but like, that's why America lost pretty much in the Vietnam War, because we didn't know those jungles like that. So we try to go in there thinking that we can do the same.
That guerrilla warfare is real. We had them Vietnamese jumping out of damn trees, slicing everybody's necks and shit. We on their turf, and I think that is also just America. America is such an entitled country. It bothers me sometimes. Like I say, I don't try and go off on my conspiracy tangents, but it often, like, I try not to think about it because it spooks the hell out of me. Because if you do your research, like, the United States is like the only country that has all of these different bases on all of these other countries. But you cannot have no damn base, and you don't get to see what we doing, but we get to be in your country and watch you.
That's why we have the biggest military in the world, is because we're stationed everywhere. So we have and then we have different demographics of people in each country versus where if you go to like I said, Korea, they just got Koreans, mainly in their army, but we got everybody everywhere. So we got eyes that, it's.
And I'm just like, who the hell do we think we are? Like, that's the scariest.
The world police.
That's the scariest part to me, because I'm like, we not smart. Like, the smartest people we get be from those countries.
Right.
So I'm like, if these people ever wanted to go back and give any intelligence back to their countries, we would do nothing without them. Our education system isn't the top 5. Like, our healthcare isn't top. You know, our homelessness. Like, I'm just like, who the fuck do we think we are to be in these places? And that spooks the hell out of me, because I'm like, if we get a China and Russia together, if we get that's all we need, you know. And I think we forget about that. Like, people, we pick and choose when to have hearts.
Right.
You know, some of these people come from totally different schools of thought, especially in like the Middle East. They will die for their religion. They will die for where our cowardly ass, you know, you don't know. Like, hell, them Russians drink, I swear they drink vodka like water, like up in the cold ass, you know, Siberian air.
Right.
Like, who the hell are we to think that we can compete with something like that? I often think that, and it just spooks me. And even how arrogant we were to go to the Middle East and try and change so many thoughts and principles there. Right. I'm just like, our shit isn't right in our own backyard. And if we were founded on separate church and state, and their church is their state and has been longer than this country was founded, how do we not understand the disrespect that we're taking in doing stuff like that? It even makes me think of, you heard about the guy who he was a missionary who went to the island. I think it was like in Australia. He went to the island, and it was a non-contacted group, like a non-contacted tribe that killed his ass. And everybody was like, some Christians were like, oh, the tribe, they need to go over there and I guess, like, I don't know, arrest the tribe or retaliate in some way. But I'm like, hell no. I mean,
they was minding their business and you came into the area.
And you came over there. And you could wipe them out with your diseases, with the things that they are not immune to because they've never come in contact.
Because the question is, why were you over there?
Because you want to show them your God. Who showed you your God? Right. You know, so it's just like, I think we have this colonial, like, let me change you, like we know the way. That's that white people stuff though. Like, I know, like, I don't know. It's so weird to me. Like, a white person would tell you all about black people because they got 2 black friends. Like, you know, I don't understand that.
Like I said, it's a sense of entitlement. And what I concluded with a lot of different, well, just people in general now, people seek so much. They want power. They want to be in control. And the thing is, if you know, let's just say you knew everything, then what? You know what I mean? If you owned it, you controlled everything, now what? Nothing. Now, you know, where do you go from there? So it's like, but what is the point of exploiting and exploring all these different things? So, like, them going over there to the islands, and like, where were you going to help? If you converted all those people, then what? Now, what if everybody in the world is now believing the same thing as you? Now, do you think that's going to make the world a better place?
Yeah, like, I mean, you went over to this country where they weren't bothering nobody. Like, they stayed on their island. Right. So what is you showing your guide to, and how long did you plan to be there?
Respect thy neighbor.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like that is just, I don't know. America has a lot of issues. We really do.
But see, then with that, us as black people will we follow right in those same issues of America, but just in a different direction. So we'll talk kind of like what you mentioned earlier. Like, we'll be talking about how, like, don't join this and this and this and that, and like, don't do that because you're a sellout now. But then it's like, but then you do this other stupid shit over here. So it's like, how are you helping by doing what you're doing? And a lot of black people, like even some revolutionary people, they'll talk about, you know, not living the what's quote unquote the American dream, but at the same time they want bread off of the American dream.
Yeah. And I often think what I've now found, and a lot of times in dealing with like the whole woke group and community, dealing with the black community altogether, I don't always think that we want fairness. We want almost like not even retribution. We want the scale to be flipped. So it's like, we want black people to be in power and for us to have the same privileges that white people have. But what does that do?
Right, but it doesn't help. So for one, we got to think, yeah, you know, white people have done this wrong for ever.
Yeah.
And still is. You know, that's fact again. You know, you could look at, you mentioned like, who did you mention earlier?
Carter G. Woodson, W.E.B.
I know the young guys that were getting killed by the police and stuff.
Oh, from the Michael Brown. Like,
Michael
protest.
Brown. So it's like, you mentioned them, but people forgot about Trayvon. But do you remember James Byrd? Mm-hmm. This happened in like Jasper, Texas. I can't remember how many years ago, but he was basically picked up off of his porch and drugged. So these white guys,
on a truck, and
but like even during that time, it might have, that whole story probably, it didn't last in as long as like Michael Brown and Trayvon and stuff like that. So like that, after a while, that was like, you know, that's done and over with. So people make it seem like, you know, racism is gone in this country, and like we've come so far, we've gotten further, but basically to me, a lot of the stuff is still the same. It's just changed. So you just relabeled something and slapped a different label on it and call it this. It's like, no, we're not going to call it slavery. We're not going to call it discrimination. We're going to call it this over here.
Right.
It's the same tactics, the same thing. But I think a lot of us sometimes don't even see it. So we just fall right into the play of all that. Yeah. Especially like some of us that do get a good education and whatnot. Then we want to look down on other black people and say stuff like, you know,
instead of opening those doors.
Right. And we're like, oh, you know, I came from the ghettos too, and I have to.
We all have the same. Yeah, all that bullshit.
The thing is, we don't all have the same opportunity.
We don't all have the same opportunities. We don't all have the same resources. We don't have the same drive and motivation. And so I think, and just with the internalized hatred and just the generational issues that, you know, we have, I don't think it's fair to say that. But no, when I was at Baylor, right after I graduated, it was a student there who was there while I was there a little while. His name was Savion, and he made it on like American Idol, and all of this stuff. But Savion actually had a brother who was older, like much older. He was a married physician out in, I think, maybe like Gerald, Texas. So literally like 40, 50 minutes from here. So it was right between Temple, Texas and Waco, Texas, where we were at in Baylor. But his brother was a physician, and he was driving down, like it's a small town, was on his way home, and his truck broke down. And he called his wife and told his wife that, you know, he was having car trouble.
Right.
And then they didn't hear from him. They did not find this man. I think it was like right around Thanksgiving. It took like 2 weeks, and they found this man's body. And he was a doctor. They found him, either a doctor or pharmacist, but they found him with like missing teeth. He was missing like an ear. His pants were pulled down, and like the family were like fighting to get, you know, just, you know, like to get help and to get answers. And they ruled it, saying that it was drug related, that this man
so he
was
cut his ear off and all that.
Yeah, that it was drug related and self-inflicted. And I was just like, oh my God. And I think to just see something like that is crazy. And then another artist I work with, her name, we mentioned her before, Baby Rose Music. Oh, yeah. She was actually first cousins with Bakari Henderson.
Oh, wow.
And Bakari was the student he was a UT student who went to Greece for like a trip with friends, but he was the only black friend. And I think like a bartender, white woman like flirted with him in Greece, and they ended up killing him on camera. And like the family, like the group of men who killed him, they were actually sentenced a couple of months ago, and like they just got off really, really easy. And I just felt so bad for the family, because I don't think I had ever had something hit that close to home.
Right.
Like with Savion, okay, I knew of Savion.
Right.
But, you know, and I knew the cities. I had been through those cities.
Yeah.
So, of course, my heart hurt for him. But I'm like, to look at also from an artist that I've worked with.
Right.
But I worked with his dad. I worked with his dad at a black nonprofit.
Much closer.
So to hear about it, I was just like, crushed because I'm like, his parents, how much his parents put into raising this black man that was able to go to the University of Texas and had never gotten into any trouble as a black man in Austin. And then to go over on a trip to try and allow your child to be a child and have the same privileges that so many other people do, and to be killed because a woman made advances towards him and he had no protection and no resources and no allies in that place. Like, that's scary.
And people don't understand how hard it is being a black male in America. And kind of going back to what we said earlier, like one struggle versus the next, but like being a black male in America, and don't be a gay black male in America, because that's just adding on to, us already being a plague in this country or whatever, because there's times where I'm driving and I don't do anything. I have no record. I know I'm going the speed limit, doing everything correct, right? But even I strategically put my wallet in a certain place, easy reachable, easy visible, and I shouldn't have to drive like that. I shouldn't have to drive with those extra precautions like that, whereas someone else of a different race or culture wouldn't have to do that. But, like, I have to consciously think about that stuff just going outside. So it's like when people talk about, when we say Black Lives Matter, that's the kind of things we're talking about, but people don't understand it, and they want to say, like, well, all lives matter. Yeah, but we're specifically saying this because oftentimes it seems like our lives don't matter.
Yeah, a black man gets shot, and it's, where was he? Why was he in that side of town? What was he doing?
Just
who was
overlooking
he with?
the simple
why was
fact
he talking?
that,
like, what the hell? Like, why are we so into victim blaming? And I think you're absolutely right. And I often wonder, it's not a whose plight is worse than the other, but often with black women, because it's like with black men, it's like, okay, they respect a black man's anger to a certain extent, to that they almost fear it.
Right.
But with the black woman, we're just angry black
angry
bitches.
Black women.
And it's like with white women, and I joked about it, but my mom, because people will talk about my temper sometimes, especially me in business. In business, I am a bitch, and I will own that. Because I put up those defense mechanisms, I put up those boundaries, because so many times I've been the only woman at the table, the youngest woman at the table, the blackest woman at the table, the poorest woman, poorest person at the table. And so I've had to fight for my seat at the table so many times. And so I am very direct. I am very outspoken. And my mom joked about it, and she was like, you think you're privileged like these white women out here. Because, white women can be angry. And it has never been a white woman who's complained about my disposition or my personality. It's always everybody else. But white women, you're so fiery. I love it. Because nobody puts anybody on a pedestal
if a black
like
woman
they
do
do
it, like you're
for
saying,
a
it's an
white
angry
woman.
black woman, or y'all militant.
Exactly. And I'm just like, we get like, you're not hearing where that anger is stemming from. With black men, you just fear it. With black women, you completely disregard it. It's just like, oh, this just another angry ass bitch, And that's really how it is. Instead of saying, let's get to the root of this. With black men, they fear it completely, probably because they know what they've done. But it's like with black women, I feel at times we are on the very bottom of the totem pole, because as a black man, you have that strength, or at least that appearance of strength. With black women, we're just meek. We're just, we're just angry. And that's all we ever get. You don't hear what we're angry about. You don't hear what our issues are. But you got white women talking about feminism that only includes them, and everybody got to stop and listen when they say, I'm taking a stand against men and I'm not shaving my legs and my arms and all of this shit. And they can do that. But with black women, I think it's a totally different thing.
And even sometimes some of the, when the white women do, that I've heard, to talk about feminism, they're only really talking about it against the white male.
Exactly.
But, if they want to be fair, they should say it about the black male as well, every race. So it's like, but then, like, going back to what you're saying about being the angry black woman, no one does take the time to understand why. Like you even mentioned earlier, you're a mother, you're doing this and doing that, but they don't take that into consideration. So when you're bitching and complaining, quote unquote, people can't see that, but like when you're doing that, people are just like, oh, here's that angry black lady. But it's like, you don't know, for one, you don't know your situation, but then you don't know your upcoming and your upbringing. And if you kind of even stem it back all the way to our history, how women had to be in this role
of raising men. And I don't think it was always that case. Absolutely not. But I always go back to look at times like the, you know, World War II and things like that, where you had the drafts that forced black men over. And if you think, like, at the same time, I hate it because it's like we were fighting this struggle on different fronts. The black women were having to go from never working to having to work to sustain their families, or at least supplement, you know, some of that income. Black men are in these territories with men that don't respect them, that fear them, that don't see them as equals, and having to fight for these principles. But I mean, to come back after, you know, like those issues and those mental issues, women were having to raise them. They were having to continue to support the family. They were, you know, and then on top of that, having a man who had essentially checked out. And black women didn't know why. You know, we didn't know what was happening over there. And then at the same time, men weren't allowed to communicate what was happening over there for a lot of different reasons. But it seemed like weak for men to express themselves. We never allowed black men to do that. So they internalized that hatred, that pain, and everything. And that, I think, created the generations of angry children. You know, not just women, of angry children, of misunderstood children, and those mental issues on top of, and I mean, why even start there? If you think about how they would take black men's wives and have sex with them
in front
you
of
know,
them,
or how they would have sex with the men in front of, you know.
And see, people forget that about our history, right? So every time you hear about black history, all you hear is Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, slavery, right? And you know, cherry picking different names or whatever, and then you hear about all that just in February, right? And then before and after that, it's gone. Granted, I can get on Black History Month, but it's a whole nother. I ain't trying to go on a tangent, but yeah, people don't really like. A lot of people say when they watch, was it 1,000 Years of Slaves? What is that? What the name of the movie?
12 Years a Slave.
12,
I don't
whatever.
know. I ain't seen it.
It's 1,000 shit. But yeah, 12 Years of Slaves. When people sing, I never watched it. I didn't have no desire to. Still don't. But when I've heard people from different, you know, even white people, they was like, I didn't realize how bad it was. I'm like, yeah, it's in your history books, in the history books that you wrote. But then as time, they keep constantly changing the history book. So slavery becomes less and less as bad as it was. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but like it becomes lesser. It just almost just seems like, you know, we're in
it's
chains.
Diminished.
Yeah, that's where it's diminished a lot. So like a lot of people from other countries come here, because we've talked to people like Africans. They didn't realize how bad slavery was here, and that a lot of the slavery that happened here actually paved the way for a lot of different, you know, people from other countries to kind of be here. Yeah, because I know we were talking to, like I said, a friend I have from Africa. We're explaining to him, like, you know, this, and this happened. So, because what they see on TV, you know, how our slavery was, it didn't seem as bad until they find out, like, no, like, you know, we were being slaughtered and buried under people's houses, and how they had lynchings, where it was like basically a gathering where the whole family would go out and watch us burn or be hung and like celebrate, and they'll be taking pictures with our burning corpses. And it's like all that stuff still.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think when we look at people, foreigners or black foreigners, they don't come with that knowledge always. You know, so it's easy for you to, I came here, I overcame, and I did this. Because you also didn't have that fear of what we knew to happen to family members and things, you know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot.
Because even I heard, like, I think Trevor Noah, the comedian / I think he's on the Tonight Show, whatever. He talked about like the apartheid in South Africa, but from my understanding, somebody can always correct me, but even it was bad too, but it wasn't still the same as, you know, slavery was here. Because, like, again, there were slaves all over the world, and even like I'm gonna say once upon a time, but slaves initially were like, I think the word was like indentured servants. So basically, it's like you're just paying off a debt. But then it's like over here.
But black slaves weren't. That initially was for like the Irish people and stuff who came over as indentured servants and things like that. So they were looked at less than because they came over poor or in debt. But we came over not having any value. Cattle. We couldn't have debt because we weren't worth having money. We were money, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We were cattle. That's why we were being traded.
We were a commodity.
Yeah.
We were like coffee. Like, I mean, we were black coffee grounds. Like, that's essentially what we were, you know? Yeah. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. But like people wonder why like so many black people stay mad and get like super livid when like, you know, one of our black brothers and sisters getting killed. It's like when we started to try to, you know, close up some wounds and stuff like that happens, and it's like you just chopped off our limb.
Yeah. And it's almost like, if anything, if you can just say, I think with black people a lot of times, we just want you to say like, damn, that's fucked up. Like, you ain't got to say, don't say, I didn't have a part of it. It wasn't my ancestors. Like, damn, my people did that to your people. That's fucked up. You know, and that's pretty much it. Where did we go from it now? Like, I don't like the white guilt that I get a lot of times, especially when I was working for a black nonprofit that was centered around what white people had done to black people in Austin. So it was like they'd always approach us with this guilt. And what can I do? Like, what the fuck you mean? Listen to people. Don't like ask them what are ways to be an ally. And I like really didn't realize that until I was sitting with my wife in Atlanta. And but yes, where are we at now? I felt like we kept getting thrown off.
Yeah, I know you were saying something about your friend, gay white guy.
Yeah, and he was just really it was when that guy was confirmed in the seat for what was it, for Supreme Court Justice. And he was just like, how could he be confirmed after all this stuff has come out? And he was just like, if he did this towards a white woman, what would, like, I wonder what his sentencing would look like towards black people. And I'm sitting there looking at my gay white friend like, Ryan, are you woke? Okay. You know, but for him to be able to make that jump and that leap, and this not only bothers me or my community, how does this impact somebody else? And he really said, I just don't know what to do. He's like, I don't know what to do, you know, in trying to be a good ally. And I said, just what you did.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out more. I'm like, you are in a very white, safe space. Even with you being gay, you gay in Atlanta.
Right.
So I'm like, you don't have to worry about that shit. But to even want for you to say, I saw this on the news, I'm sparking up this conversation. I'm not waiting until somebody else is outraged to say, yeah, I saw it, but
and all the bandwagon jumpers come.
Exactly. I was just like, I'd imagine, you know, and I think I told this story before, but he also, we went to we went to the chicken restaurant, and I was asking him of places to go to, but he hadn't been to that one. Right. And he was like, it's a fried chicken place, but if that offends you, like, we don't have to go.
Right.
Like, I don't want, like, it wasn't about that. He's like, I like fried chicken too, girl. So we ain't got nothing to do with that. And I was like, no, it's fine. And then when we went, and he was like, oh, this is a nice little vibe. Right. And then he researched it and was like, you know, this is white owned. They really got it posed as it's black owned in the black community. You know, so I'm like, to even have those issues in that.
And I think, for, like you said, if white people want to be our allies or whatever, it's really, we just need them to understand. So like you're saying, things like that, just simple things that will let us know that you understand. No, you don't have to necessarily march with us and all that kind of stuff, but just trying to get a better understanding and educate yourself on where we're coming from with those kinds of things. You said something right before. Oh yeah, that.
Just in being an ally.
Well, like he said how the business isn't black owned, so there's a lot of businesses that are like that we have that aren't owned by us. So when people say, you know, Black Lives Matter or well, if we had a White History Month, it's like there's a lot of things like that. It's like you don't understand, like, you know, the majority of a lot of stuff is run by white people. So when we try to do something for ourselves, people try to make it seem like, I hate this word, reverse racism. I've heard that word only really by white people, but I know where they're coming from when they say it, but it doesn't make any sense because, for one, the word racism just means that, you know, you're racist against a particular race. Now, if you say reverse, you can't reverse it. It's just a thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you can't say reverse racism. But I know they're saying, like, well, you know, I heard
But no, I think it's so funny. Now that you said that and I think about it, it's almost like we're only allowed to be racist towards you. Like reverse racism, like you said, if that's just hating another race,
right,
then that's what. But it's like, how dare?
Right.
It's almost like it's only pointed towards black people.
Exactly.
And if black people hate anybody else, oh no.
That's reverse racism.
You're reversing this shit, and it don't work like that.
Right.
We can only hate you. That's the only way this works.
And see, and like that, people be like, no, that's not what it means. Yes, it does. Like, for us to have to even question what the idea means, reverse means to go the opposite way. And if you're saying, yeah, it's only logic. And here recently, this may be off subject, maybe not, but have you heard nigger fishing?
No.
I never heard.
Oh, no. Where the white girls have been like contouring their faces and stuff with makeup to look dark skinned.
So my issue with just that word is the same issue I have with the word wigger or wigger. Is basically wigger means white nigga or white nigger, and nigger fishing basically you're saying, basically it comes down to you're saying black people are niggas or niggers.
Right.
So if we use the word, we're just as bad. To me, that's actually worse than you calling me a nigga, because now you're really just saying that all black people are niggers or niggas, and then by you saying, you know,
like a general, yeah. Right.
So it's like, no. So I disagree with that word for everybody listening. It's not ever say nigger fishing. The only time that could really be used or something like that is only an internal thing.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely.
And another thing, when people say, why can't we say the word too?
Let me tell you why. Let me give you 1,000 reasons why. Right. Actually, I'm just giving you one. Because you fucking can't. So, moving on. Drink some water.
Right.
You know, pray about it. Meditate if you have to. But at the end of the day, the answer is still no.
Because to me, you know what it's like? It's, you know, like me and you cool. If we're talking shit about each other, this is what it is. Now, if somebody else come over here and say any of the same stuff that you and I said to each other.
We both look at each other. We stop.
Right.
Our engagement, and we look at each other like, excuse me?
Oh, no, I was just saying, no, you can't, you're not in this circle. Because like me,
you have not earned this right. You have not earned this privilege in the lack of privilege that we have
right.
and we share in this plight. You cannot, I reserve the right to whoop your ass if you say that, because you have not done the work or not been allowed to do the work enough to be able to say that. And that's really just it. Point blank, period.
Yeah.
DT. But yes, I feel like we were like very radical this time. I don't even know how to put it on a light, sweet note. But like I said, you know, eat. You can be vegan. You can be vegetarian. Or you can just, you know, fry up some bacon. Drink you some water. And don't be racist.
Yeah.
Now, reverse racism, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, all that other shit, no, we're very anti. No, I'm kidding. I mean, that doesn't exist. But anyways, yes. So thank y'all for tuning in. As always, I'm Key.
I'm Devin. Peace.